Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast. This is an invitation to radical reconstruction of a man's masculine heart and soul and a place of safe community where we dare to ask questions deep seated inside a man and explore ways to help you become a better man, a better son, a better dad, and a better spouse. Well, it's great to have you here with me today, and I'm grateful for you to share another week with me on the True Man Podcast. Now, I need your help. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, and I sure hope you do, will you forward it on to a friend? Just grab your phone right now and send this link out for the True Man Podcast in a text, and just let them know, hey, I enjoy listening to this, and I think you might get something out of it too. And I really do want to impact more lives, and touching more lives is what I'm all about. And I greatly appreciate your help in that effort. Well, the other day in my men's group, the idea of more came up in our group. Now, this idea of more is something that, it's not an accumulation of wealth or material things that a lot of people associate the term more with. It's really the accumulation of a closer, more intimate relationship with Christ. And it's really a quest for most all of us. And, it has been a journey for me to discover what a life of more means and how I feel full inside by being on that quest to live a life of more. Now, if you go back and read the Bible, you're going to find that this quest for more really has been a quest, not just a quest, but a problem all the way back to the very beginning. I mean, just circle back to Adam and Eve again. I know I go back to them quite often because they're easy targets. They're right there in the beginning of the Bible in the garden, and you see how they failed the test that God laid out before them as they ate of forbidden fruit. Now, the devil and all of his antics tend to always rear his ugly head, typically when we least want it, or maybe when we're, most vulnerable for him to show up. But as humans, we typically tend to follow that path of least resistance, don't we? The man, the devil is really good at giving us that path of least resistance as an option. And, we're kind of suckers, so we tend to fall for it and go down that easy road. But this quest for more in our lives, do you wonder what it is? What is it? How do you get it? Where do you get some of that? Where do I even begin? You may be asking. Well, what does a life of more mean to you? Now, for many of us, the first thing that comes to mind again is those material things: more money, more possessions, more status. We live in a society that constantly pushes this idea that more equals happiness. Now, if you go to the store and you have two side by side products, mostly of equal value, we will always take a second look and probably even purchase the product that has more in it, thinking we're going to get more out of it. But is that always the case? Yet, how often do we achieve or feel that more, or we buy more only to feel emptier than we did before? Why does the pursuit of worldly abundance often leave us feeling unfulfilled? Have you felt this? Have you experienced this? I know I have. Today, I want to offer a different perspective of more. A true life of more is not about accumulation. It's about deeper trust in Christ, an intimate relationship with God, and the freedom that comes from living a life led by faith instead of fear. Now, fear, as I will discuss today, is often one of the bigger barriers standing between us and the life that God intends for us. In fact, fear is something that I'm finding as I talk to more and more people dominates their life. And we often allow that to happen. And why why do we do that? Fear, which is really an acronym for fear of everything appearing real, well, it keeps us clinging to some kind of illusion, an illusion that distracts us from what really matters in life. So let's explore how we can lean into a life of prayer and trust, overcoming the fears that hold us back. And you'll begin to see how living a life of more isn't just about possessions, it's about freedom to lead ourselves, our families, and our careers anchored in God's love and purpose. So let's begin with this idea of fear. Now, fear is something every man and really every person experiences, don't we? Fear of failure, fear of not providing enough for your family, a fear of surrendering control. Fear whispers to us that we're not enough, that we must keep striving, keep accumulating in order to feel secure in this world. But fear is a nasty illusion. And remember that acronym again, fear of everything appearing real, because it magnifies our worries, it distorts reality. Consider the story of Peter walking on water in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 and 33. When Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he walked on water. But the moment he focused on the wind and the waves, look out, fear overtook him and he began to sink. Now, isn't this how fear works in our lives? When we focus on the storms around us, the bills, the deadlines, the expectations, the excuses that we can come up with, and we're really good at making them, when we do all that, we lose sight of Christ and we begin to sink, don't we? Now, Jesus is always there for us, reaching out, saying, take heart. It is I. Don't be afraid. He's always there to tell us that. Now, God did not give us a spirit of fear. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, Paul reminds us, for God gave us a spirit, not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Trust in God's provisions. Trust that they will dismantle those fears that you have, because it shifts our focus from the illusion to the truth. Truth in God. But here's the challenge. Identify your fears. What's holding you back from trusting God fully? Write it down, journal it, bring it to Him in prayer. Fear thrives in silence, but it cannot stand in the light of God's truth. Now, here's something interesting. Fear is holding you back, whether you want to admit it or not. Fear is holding you back. Right now, you're probably experiencing it, maybe experiencing fear in some way. I know, I've gone through this. Fear is preventing you from achieving a life of more. And fear cannot be overcome until you go take a hard look in the mirror and accept that the only one that can overcome this is you through the power of prayer. And if you make a decision to face fear straight up and head on in life, I know you will begin to have powerful breakthroughs in your life. And I will dare say, beginning the life of more that you're looking for. I've experienced this as well. Just doing this podcast, we're 180. This is the 187th episode of this podcast. You have no idea how scared Paul Bailey and I were to just hit the record button on podcast number 1, just to talk into a microphone like I'm doing right now. It gripped us. It literally took us 30 minutes, maybe more, to do that first show. So I know what you're experiencing. I've been there, but you can overcome this. So you may be asking, well, Mike, how do I do this? Well, let's talk about prayer. Prayer is not just a ritual, it is the lifeline of our faith. It's how we connect with God, it's how we share our hearts, it's how we hear His guidance. Now, imagine a close friendship. Just think about that in your mind, somebody you're close to. What would happen if you never spoke to your friend? If you only communicated emergencies or you did so through a hurried, one sided conversation? Wouldn't that relationship wither? Wouldn't it maybe perhaps die on the vine? Well, the same is true with God. Prayer nurtures our intimacy with Him. Here are 3 steps I'm going to give you today to deepen your prayer life. 3 things that I've practiced. Consistency. Set aside time each day for prayer. Whether it's in the morning before all the chaos of the day begins or in the evening as you reflect, make it a non negotiable part of your routine. And you can build that consistency into other areas of your life. But I think you'll begin to see that having that consistency, that time with God is really going to benefit you. It'll help you slow down. It'll help you discern. It'll help you gain wisdom. Number 2, authenticity. Be honest with God. He knows anyway, but He wants to hear from you. He wants to hear what's on your heart. Share your fears, your frustrations, your dreams. He already knows what's on your heart, but voicing it strengthens your relationship. And finally, listening. Believe it or not, prayer is not just about speaking. It's also about listening. And it's cultivating those moments of silence to hear God's whisper. Now, I talked about hearing from God on podcast episode number 176 entitled The Gentle Voice of God, Recognizing His Presence in Everyday Life. So if you want to hear more about this topic, I would encourage you to go listen to that podcast. Now, continuing on, when we make prayer a habit, when we trust in God, trust in God will naturally follow. So in Matthew chapter 6:33, it says, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all things will be given to you as well. Prayer refocuses our priorities, aligning our hearts with His kingdom rather than fleeting things in this world. So let me share a story with you real quick. A friend of mine was facing a financial crisis, and instead of panicking, he turned it over to God in prayer, trusting that God was going to provide. Slowly but surely, unexpected opportunities and help came his way. And through that experience, he learned that God's provisions often come in ways we don't anticipate, but it always comes. Has that ever happened to you? Trusting God over our stuff is a choice that we have to make daily. It's not easy, but it is freeing. And prayer is the practice that makes this choice possible. Now, when we let go of fear and lean into prayer, we're going to discover freedom. But let's define what freedom really means. Now, the world tells us freedom is doing whatever we want, whenever we want. But this kind of freedom often leads us to bondage, to debt, to stress, and to the constant need to keep up. True freedom, the kind that Jesus offers, is the ability to live authentically and purposefully, guided by faith rather than fear or material expectations. So in Matthew chapter 11, 28, verse 30, Jesus invites us. He says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Man, how does it make you feel to hear that? The yoke of Christ is light because it aligns with our true purpose. It frees us from the burdens we place on ourselves when the chaos of the world tries to define success for us. How do we live this freedom? Well, first, reprioritize. Ask yourself, what am I seeking first? God's kingdom or my own ambition? Second, delegate control. Trust God with the outcomes instead of obsessing over the results. Third, model freedom. Show your family and your community around you what it means to live a life rooted in trust in God's plan. Freedom through faith isn't just a concept, it's a reality that we can live out each day by surrendering our fears and trusting in God's plan. Now, when we embrace this freedom, we're equipped to lead a life of more. Now, as men, we're called to lead ourselves, our families, and our communities, but true leadership begins with faith. And a man rooted in faith with integrity, compassion, and vision, while he understands that vulnerability is not a weakness but a strength. Trusting God means admitting we don't have all the answers, but we rely on his guidance. Consider the impact this can have on your family and on your life. When your spouse and your children, the people you work with, see you living a life of prayer and trust, well, they're inspired to do the same because you're living by example. And Proverbs 22:6 reminds us, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. You're living your life by example. And in your career, faith based leadership fosters ethical decisions and inspires teams and families to pursue not just profits, but purpose. And this kind of leadership leaves a legacy that outlives titles and paychecks. What legacy do you want to leave? Is it one of possessions or one of faith, love, and service? The choice is yours. So make a good one. Now, in closing today, a life of more is not about accumulation, it's about trust in Christ. Fear, again, is that illusion that distracts us from God's truth. And prayer is the key to intimacy and trust in God. So, freedom through faith allows us to lead with purpose and leave a legacy of eternal significance. So, today I want to challenge you to redefine more in your life. Commit to daily prayer. Identify and release your fears to God. And lead others by living a life rooted in trust. And remember, Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 reminds us, beautiful verse. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and hope. Trust in men with your life of more. It's a life of freedom, purpose, and lasting impact. As we begin anew in 2025, you may have, I hope, goals and plans written down. You may have dreams. I hope you have them written down. But if you're listening to me now and wondering, I don't know where to start, I'm not even sure if I understand this concept of more in my life, well, I'm happy to talk with you about it. Just reach out to me at Mike at True Man Life Coaching, and I will offer you a free phone call and we can talk about where to begin and how you can develop the life of more that you're looking for. Well, I'll tell you, it's a great privilege of my life to come on these podcasts and talk with you. And I really and truly hope that you're getting something out of it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you are, please grab your phone right now and forward this on to a friend. I really appreciate it. It's a tremendous opportunity to me to be able to talk with my audience and to impact the world and the lives of men for good so that they can be there for their families. Well, until next week, develop a plan. Discover how you can live a life of more. Pray about it, think about it, and go out and have your very, very best day ever.